A single mother stood over a table in an empty restaurant, staring at $1,000 in cash. Her daughter had cancer. The rent was 3 months overdue. The hospital had given her 10 days to pay for the next round of chemotherapy. No one was watching. The security camera in this section had been broken for a week. The manager was drunk at the bar. $1,000, enough to survive another month. But the money belonged to a billionaire who had just received news that his son was dying in the ICU. 30 seconds to decide: survival or conscience. When no one is watching, who are you really? Before we dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your city or country in the comments. And if you enjoy stories about ordinary people making extraordinary choices, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Ella Thompson had worked at the Sterling for 3 years, long enough to know that the chandeliers above her head cost more than she would earn in a decade. The restaurant catered to people who never looked at price tags, who signed checks without glancing at the total, who left tips that could feed her family for a week without even noticing the money was gone. Tonight, she moved between tables with the quiet efficiency of someone who had learned to be invisible. Her feet ached from standing since 4 in the afternoon. Her mind kept drifting to the phone call she had received that morning from St. Mary Hospital. The voice on the other end, clinical and detached, as it explained that her daughter's next chemotherapy session needed to be paid within 10 days, or they would have to pause treatment. Mia was 7 years old. She had been diagnosed with leukemia 8 months ago, and since then, Ella's life had become a blur of hospital visits, medical bills, and sleepless nights spent calculating numbers that never added up. The treatments were working, the doctors said. But working cost money, and money was something Ella had never had enough of. She lived with her mother in a small apartment on the south side of the city, where the walls were stained with moisture, and the heating broke down every winter. Her mother, now 68, helped watch Mia when Ella worked the night shift, but the old woman's health was failing too. Some nights, Ella came home to find both of them asleep on the couch. Mia's small body curled against her grandmother's chest, both of them too tired to make it to bed. 3 months behind on rent. The chemotherapy bill growing larger every week, and now 10 days to come up with money she did not have. The private dining room at the back of the Sterling was reserved tonight for a celebration. Ella had seen the guest list when she came in for her shift. A party of 12, hosted by Fletcher Gaines, the tech billionaire whose face appeared regularly in business magazines. The dinner was to celebrate a merger worth $2 billion, the kind of number that existed only in headlines, never in real life. She had served tables like this before. The guests never looked at her directly. They spoke over her head, around her, through her, as if she were part of the furniture. She had learned not to take it personally. To them, she was simply a function, a pair of hands that delivered food and cleared plates. Nothing more. Rosa, who had worked at the Sterling for 15 years, had taught her that lesson early on. Rosa was 45, heavy-set. With graying hair she kept pulled back in a tight bun. She had raised 3 children on a waitress's salary and buried a husband who drank himself to death. Nothing surprised her anymore. You keep your head down, you do your job, you go home, Rosa had told Ella on her first week. These people, they live in a different world. Don't expect them to see you. Don't expect them to care. Just take their money and feed your kids. Frank, the bartender, had a different philosophy. He was 28, handsome in a careless way, with a quick smile that never reached his eyes. He had been working at the Sterling for 2 years and had developed a particular kind of bitterness toward the wealthy clients they served. "They're not better than us," he would say, polishing glasses with exaggerated care. "They just got lucky. Born into the right family, met the right people, made the right bets. That's all success is. Luck dressed up as merit." Ella did not agree or disagree. She simply worked. Tonight, like every night, she focused on the tasks in front of her. refilling water glasses, bringing out appetizers, clearing plates. The party in the private room was loud with laughter and champagne toasts. Fletcher Gaines sat at the head of the table. A tall man in his late 40s with silver hair and the kind of confident posture that came from decades of being the most important person in every room. She noticed him because he was the only one not laughing. While his guests celebrated around him, he sat with his phone in his hand, staring at the screen with an expression she could not read. Distracted, maybe, or worried. It was hard to tell with men like him. At 9:47, his phone rang. Ella was clearing plates from a side table when she saw him answer. She did not hear what the voice on the other end said, but she saw the effect it had. Fletcher's face went pale. His hand gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair, and said something to the guests nearest him before walking quickly toward the exit. He did not stop to shake hands. He did not pause to say goodbye. He moved like a man who had just received news that the world was ending, and on the table where he had been sitting, he left behind a stack of bills. Ella did not notice the money at first. She was busy collecting dishes, stacking them carefully on her tray, moving with the mechanical precision that came from years of practice. It was only when she reached for the napkin beside Fletcher's plate that she saw it. $100 bills, fanned out like a hand of cards, $1,000 in cash. She looked around. The other guests were still absorbed in their conversations, oblivious to their host's sudden departure. The manager, Mr. Patterson, was at the bar, 3 whiskeys deep and showing no signs of slowing down. The security camera in this corner of the room had been broken for a week. She knew because Patterson had complained about it every day, promising to call someone to fix it and never following through. No one was watching. Ella's hand hovered over the money. Her heart pounded against her ribs. $1,000. Enough to pay for Mia's medication this month. Enough to buy a few more weeks with the landlord. Enough to keep her head above water just a little longer. She thought about what Rosa always said, these people don't notice, they don't care. $1,000 to a billionaire was like a penny to her. He would never miss it. He probably would not even remember leaving it behind. Her fingers touched the edge of the bills. The paper was crisp and clean, the kind of money that had never been crumpled in a pocket or smoothed out after being found in the bottom of a purse. "Hey!" Ella flinched. Rosa had appeared beside her, voice low. "I saw what he left," Rosa whispered. "Take it. He's a billionaire, honey. That money means nothing to him. But for you, for Mia, it could be everything." Ella's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to explain why she could not, but the words stuck in her chest. From across the room, Frank's voice cut through the noise. He had been watching from the bar, a knowing smirk on his face. "Look at her," he said, loud enough for Ella to hear. "Standing there like she's actually considering being honest. The poor ones always love to play righteous, makes them feel better about having nothing." Rosa shot him a glare, but Frank just shrugged and went back to polishing his glasses. Ella stood frozen, the money still on the table, her hand still hovering above it. She thought about Mia lying in the hospital bed, small and pale, asking when she could go home. She thought about her mother coughing through the night, too proud to admit she needed to see a doctor herself. She thought about the notice from the landlord, the red letters stamped across the envelope. Final warning. 30 seconds passed, maybe longer. Time had become elastic, stretching and compressing in ways that made no sense. Then Ella picked up the money. Rosa exhaled with relief. "Good girl. You're doing the right thing." But Ella did not put the money in her pocket. Instead, she folded the bills carefully and walked over to where Mr. Patterson sat, slumped at the bar. "The man who just left," she said. "The one who hosted the party. What's his name?" Patterson looked up, bleary-eyed. "Gaines. Fletcher Gaines." "Why?" Ella did not answer. She tucked the money into her apron and returned to clearing tables. Rosa stared at her in disbelief. "What are you doing?" I'm going to return it. Return it? To a billionaire? Ella, have you lost your mind? It's not mine, Rosa. Neither is the cancer eating your daughter alive. Rosa's voice cracked. Neither is the debt that's drowning you. You think God put that money in front of you by accident? This is a sign. Take it. Ella shook her head. She could not explain it. Not in words that would make sense to Rosa or anyone else. All she knew was that if she kept this money, if she bought her survival with something that did not belong to her, she would lose something far more important than $1,000. Her daughter was watching. Not literally, not tonight, but in the way that children always watch their parents, learning who to become by observing who their mothers and fathers already were. If Ella taught Mia that it was acceptable to take what was not yours when no one was looking, what kind of person would Mia grow up to be? Frank laughed from behind the bar. She's really going to do it. She's really going to give back $1,000 to a man who wipes his ass with $100 bills. That's not integrity. That's stupidity. Ella ignored him. She finished her shift, clocked out, and stepped into the night. The rain had started while she was inside. She had no umbrella, but she had a name, and she had made a decision. Now she just had to find Fletcher Gaines. The rain fell harder as Ella stood at the bus stop, her waitress uniform soaking through within minutes. She pulled out her phone, the screen cracked from when Mia had accidentally knocked it off the kitchen counter last month. The replacement would have cost $80 she did not have, so she had learned to navigate around the spider web of broken glass. She typed Fletcher Gaines into the search bar and waited for the results to load. His face appeared immediately, the same silver-haired man she had seen leaving the restaurant in a panic just hours ago. Tech billionaire, CEO of Gaines Dynamics, net worth estimated at $4.7 billion. The numbers meant nothing to her, abstractions so large they ceased to have any real meaning. She scrolled through article after article, looking for something useful. His company headquarters was downtown, but it was nearly 11 at night. No one would be there. His home address was not public, just vague references to an estate somewhere in the hills outside the city. She had no car, no money for a taxi, and the buses did not run to neighborhoods like that. She was about to give up when a news alert caught her eye. It had been posted only 20 minutes ago. Son of tech billionaire Fletcher Gaines in critical condition following car accident. Currently receiving treatment at St. Mary Hospital. St. Mary, the same hospital where Mia received her chemotherapy. The same building where Ella had spent countless hours sitting in waiting rooms, filling out insurance forms, bargaining with billing departments. The last bus of the night was pulling up to the stop. Ella climbed aboard, paid her fare with quarters she had been saving for laundry, and found a seat near the back. The ride would take 40 minutes with all the stops. She leaned her head against the window and watched the city lights blur through the rain. Rosa's voice echoed in her mind. This is a sign. Take it. Frank's laughter followed. That's not integrity. That's stupidity. Maybe they were both right. Maybe she was a fool for chasing a billionaire through the rain to return money he would never miss. But every time she thought about keeping it, she saw Mia's face. Not the pale, tired face from the hospital bed, but the bright-eyed girl who used to ask her mother questions about right and wrong, about why some people had so much and others had so little, about whether being good actually mattered in a world that seemed to reward the opposite. What would she tell that girl if she kept the money? The bus let her off 3 blocks from the hospital. She walked the rest of the way, her shoes squelching with every step, her hair plastered to her face. By the time she pushed through the hospital's main entrance, she looked like someone who had been pulled from a river. The woman at the reception desk glanced up, took in Ella's appearance, and frowned. "Can I help you?" "I need to see Fletcher Gaines." The receptionist's expression shifted from mild annoyance to guarded suspicion. "Mr. Gaines is not receiving visitors. Are you family?" "No, but I have something that belongs to him. Something he left behind. You can leave it with me. I'll make sure he gets it. Ella shook her head. I need to give it to him personally. That's not possible. Mr. Gaines has requested privacy. If you're not family, I can't let you through. A security guard had noticed the exchange and was walking toward them, his hand resting casually on his belt. He was a large man, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that suggested he had seen every possible variation of trouble and was no longer impressed by any of it. Is there a problem here? He asked. This woman wants to see Mr. Gaines, the receptionist said. I've told her that's not possible. The guard turned to Ella. Ma'am, visiting hours are over. If you don't have authorization, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Ella stood her ground. My daughter is a patient here, 4th floor, pediatric oncology. I've been coming to this hospital every week for 8 months. I know what it's like to sit in a waiting room and wonder if your child is going to survive the night. That man upstairs is going through the same thing right now, and I have something he needs. The guard studied her for a long moment. Something in her voice, in the exhaustion etched into her face, made him hesitate. Before he could respond, the elevator doors opened behind them. Fletcher Gaines stepped out. He looked nothing like the polished billionaire from the magazine covers. His tie was loosened, his shirt untucked, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. He moved like a man walking through a fog, barely aware of his surroundings. Ella stepped forward. Mr. Gaines. He stopped, confusion flickering across his face. Do I know you? No. She reached into her apron and pulled out the folded bills. You left this at the restaurant tonight, $1,000. Fletcher stared at the money as if he did not recognize what it was. Then he looked at her soaked uniform, her dripping hair, the cracked phone still clutched in her other hand. You came all the way here, he said slowly, in the middle of the night, in this weather, to return $1,000? It doesn't belong to me. He let out a sound that might have been a laugh, but there was no humor in it. Do you have any idea how much money I have? $1,000 is nothing. It's less than nothing. I know, Ella said, but it's everything to me, and that's exactly why I can't keep it. Fletcher fell silent. For the first time since she had approached him, he actually looked at her, not through her, not past her, but at her, as if seeing her for the first time. Why? The question came out hoarse, almost desperate. Why does it matter? Ella thought about Mia, about the lessons she wanted to teach her daughter, about the kind of person she wanted to be. Because my little girl is upstairs in this hospital, cancer, and if I teach her that it's okay to take things that aren't yours when nobody's watching, then what am I really teaching her about life? Fletcher's composure cracked. His shoulders sagged, and suddenly he looked less like a billionaire and more like a tired, frightened father. My son is in the ICU, he said quietly. Car accident. They don't know if he's going to make it through the night. He rubbed his face with both hands. 2 years. He hasn't spoken to me in 2 years. The divorce, the custody battle, all the times I chose work over him, and now he's lying in a bed with tubes coming out of him, and I don't even know if he wants me there. Ella did not know what to say. She had expected him to take the money and dismiss her, to return to his private world of wealth and privilege where people like her did not exist. She had not expected this, had not expected him to be human. Go to him, she said finally. It doesn't matter if he wants you there or not. You need to be there. That's what parents do. Fletcher looked at her for a long moment. Then, without a word, he turned and walked back toward the elevator. Ella watched him go. She stood in the lobby for another minute, the money still in her hand, before she realized he had not taken it back. She placed the bills on the reception desk. Please make sure Mr. Gaines gets this. Then she walked back out into the rain. The next week passed in a blur of exhaustion and worry. Ella returned to work, returned to her routine of serving wealthy strangers who never looked at her face. The $1,000 was gone, delivered to a man who did not need it, and nothing had changed. The hospital still called about the bill. The landlord still sent notices. Mia still needed treatment that Ella could not afford. Rosa treated her differently now. Not with anger, but with a kind of sad resignation, as if Ella had confirmed something Rosa had always suspected about the cruelty of the world. "You had a chance," Rosa said one evening, wiping down tables as the restaurant emptied out. "A real chance. And you threw it away for what? Principles? You can't pay rent with a clear conscience, Ella. You can't buy medicine with good intentions." Ella had no answer. Some nights, lying awake in her cramped apartment, she wondered if Rosa was right. If she had made a terrible mistake, if her principles were just a luxury she could not afford. Frank, predictably, never let her forget it. "Hey, St. Ella," he would call out whenever she passed the bar. "Any billionaires leave you money today? No? Shocking." She learned to ignore him, but ignoring her own doubts was harder. 5 days after the night at the hospital, Mia spiked a fever. It started small, just a slight elevation that the home thermometer barely registered. By morning she was burning up, her small body shaking with chills, her breath coming in short, labored gasps. Ella's mother called her at work, voice trembling with fear. "Something's wrong. She's not waking up properly. You need to come home." Ella left in the middle of her shift, not bothering to explain to Mr. Patterson, not caring if she got fired. She took a taxi she could not afford because the bus would have taken too long, and by the time she reached the apartment, the ambulance was already there. The paramedics loaded Mia onto a stretcher while Ella held her daughter's hand, whispering reassurances she did not believe. At the hospital, they rushed Mia into the emergency room while Ella was left to fill out forms and answer questions and wait. The doctor who finally came to see her was a young woman with kind eyes and a careful voice. "Your daughter has a serious infection," she explained. "Her immune system is compromised from the chemotherapy, which makes her vulnerable to complications like this. We need to start her on specialized antibiotics immediately." "Then do it," Ella said. "Whatever she needs." The doctor hesitated. "The medication she requires is expensive." $3,200 for the full course of treatment. I've checked with billing, and your account is already significantly overdue. They're asking for payment before we can proceed." Ella felt the floor tilt beneath her. "You're telling me you won't treat my daughter because I can't pay?" "I'm telling you that's what the administration is requiring. I'm sorry, I wish I could do more." Ella spent the next 24 hours making phone calls. She called everyone she knew, everyone who might have money to spare. Her mother had nothing. Her friends were as broke as she was. The church offered prayers but could not offer cash. The charitable organizations she contacted had waiting lists months long. She sat in the hallway outside her daughter's room, staring at the wall, and for the first time in years, she cried. If she had kept the $1,000, she would have had something. Not enough, but something. A starting point, a foundation to build on. Instead, she had given it back to a man who probably never thought about her again, who had returned to his world of private jets and board meetings while she sat here watching her daughter struggle to breathe. Maybe Rosa was right. Maybe Frank was right. Maybe she had sacrificed her daughter's life on the altar of her own self-righteousness. Maybe being good was just another word for being a fool. The hours crawled by. The hospital gave her 24 hours to find the money. After that, they would have no choice but to delay treatment. Ella sat alone in the dark hallway and wondered if she had made the worst mistake of her life. What Ella did not know was that 12 hours before her deadline expired, an anonymous payment had cleared her daughter's account. The billing department never told her who had paid. They simply appeared at her door the next morning with paperwork, showing a zero balance and authorization to proceed with treatment immediately. Mia received her medication. Her fever broke within 48 hours. The infection retreated, beaten back by antibiotics that Ella had been certain she would never be able to afford. She asked the nurses who had paid. She asked the billing department. She asked anyone who might know. No one had answers. The payment had come through an anonymous wire transfer, untraceable, unexplained. Ella wanted to believe it was a miracle, but she had lived long enough to know that miracles rarely came without strings attached. 2 days after the payment appeared, Marcus Gaines opened his eyes. Fletcher had not left his son's bedside for more than a few minutes at a time. He had slept in the chair beside the bed, eaten meals from the hospital cafeteria, canceled every meeting and phone call that his assistant tried to schedule. For the first time in 20 years, work did not matter. Nothing mattered except the young man lying in front of him. When Marcus finally woke, the first thing he said was, "Dad?" Fletcher leaned forward, his heart pounding. "I'm here." "I'm sorry." Marcus's voice was weak, barely above a whisper. "For everything. For shutting you out. For being so angry." Fletcher took his son's hand and held it tight. "You don't have to apologize. I'm the one who should be sorry. I wasn't there when you needed me. I put the company first. And I lost you because of it. You're here now," Marcus said. "That's what matters." They talked for hours after that, the kind of conversation they should have had years ago. About the divorce, about the resentment Marcus had carried, about the ways they had both failed each other. It was painful and raw and necessary, and by the end of it, something had shifted between them. The wall that had separated them for 2 years was not gone, but it had cracked, and light was beginning to seep through. That night, alone in the hospital room while Marcus slept, Fletcher found himself thinking about the woman who had come to return his money. He had not thought about her in the immediate aftermath. His mind had been consumed by Marcus, by the surgeries and the waiting and the fear. But now, in the quiet hours before dawn, her face kept returning to him. The way she had stood in the lobby, soaking wet, holding out $1,000 like it was something precious. The way she had spoken about her daughter. The certainty in her voice when she said she could not keep what did not belong to her. In 20 years of building his empire, Fletcher had met thousands of people. Investors, executives, politicians, celebrities, people who wanted things from him, people who smiled to his face and calculated their advantage behind their eyes. He had learned to read them, to anticipate their moves, to trust no one completely. But this woman had wanted nothing. She had traveled across the city in the rain to give back money she desperately needed, and then she had walked away. No angle, no hidden agenda, just a choice made in the dark, when no one would have known if she had chosen differently. He called his assistant the next morning. "I need you to find someone for me. A woman named Ella Thompson. She works at the Sterling restaurant. Her daughter is a patient here at St. Mary, pediatric oncology." His assistant called back within the hour. The information she provided made Fletcher sit down heavily in his chair. Ella Thompson, single mother, one daughter, Mia, age 7, diagnosed with leukemia 8 months ago, currently 3 months behind on rent, medical bills totaling over $47,000. Daughter admitted to emergency care 2 days ago with a severe infection. Treatment authorized after an anonymous payment cleared the account. Fletcher smiled when he read that last part. His assistant had done exactly as he had instructed the night Mia was admitted. He had seen Ella's name in the hospital records, had connected the dots, and had made a phone call that took less than 30 seconds, but changed everything for a family he had never met. But paying her bills felt incomplete. It felt too much like charity, too much like the kind of gesture wealthy people made to ease their own consciences. Ella had not come to him looking for a handout. She had come to return something that was not hers, and she had asked for nothing in return. He needed to see her again. Fletcher arrived at the Sterling the following evening. The restaurant was busy with the dinner rush, well-dressed patrons filling the tables, champagne corks popping, laughter echoing off the high ceilings. He had spent countless evenings in places like this, surrounded by people who measured their worth in dollars and influence. Tonight, for the first time, it all felt hollow. He spotted Ella across the room. She was carrying a tray of plates, moving between tables with the same quiet efficiency he remembered from the night of his celebration dinner. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her movements slower than they should have been. But she was there, working, because that was what she did, because she had no other choice. She did not notice him at first. He waited until she finished serving a table, then stepped into her path. "Miss Thompson." Ella looked up, and recognition flickered across her face. For a moment, she seemed unsure of what to say. "Mr. Gaines, I didn't expect to see you here. I came to find you." He gestured toward an empty table in the corner. "Can we talk?" She glanced toward the bar, where the manager was watching with obvious curiosity. "I'm working. I'll speak to your manager. Please, just a few minutes." Ella hesitated, then nodded. She followed him to the corner table and sat down across from him, her hands folded in her lap, her expression guarded. "My son woke up," Fletcher said. "He's going to be okay." Relief softened her features. "I'm glad. Truly. The first thing he said to me was that he was sorry. After 2 years of silence, after all the anger and resentment, he apologized." Fletcher shook his head slowly. "I didn't deserve it, but he gave it to me anyway." He leaned forward, his eyes meeting hers. "That night in the hospital, you told me to go to him. You said it didn't matter whether he wanted me there, that I needed to be there anyway. I almost didn't listen. I almost walked away because I was afraid of being rejected again. But I thought about what you said, and I stayed." Ella said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "I've been thinking about that night ever since," Fletcher said, "about why you did what you did. You could have kept that money. No one would have known. Your daughter was sick, your bills were piling up, and $1,000 could have made a real difference. But you came to find me anyway. It wasn't mine to keep. I know. That's what I can't stop thinking about." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "I run a charitable foundation through my company. We fund education programs, medical research, community development. But lately I've started to wonder if the people managing it actually care about the mission, or if they're just there for the salary and the prestige." He slid the card across the table. "I need someone I can trust. Someone who will do the right thing even when no one is watching. Someone who can't be bought." Ella looked at the card but did not pick it up. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a position as Director of Integrity for the Gaines Foundation. You would oversee how we allocate funds, ensure that donations go where they're supposed to go, hold people accountable when they try to cut corners or line their own pockets. I don't have a college degree. I've been a waitress for 10 years. I can teach you everything you need to know about running a foundation. What I can't teach is character. You either have it or you don't." He tapped the business card. "You have it." Ella was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "I need to ask you something first." "Go ahead." "Is this because you feel sorry for me? Because if it is, I can't accept. I didn't return that money because I wanted something from you. I did it because it was the right thing to do. And I won't take a job I didn't earn just because you feel guilty." Fletcher smiled, the first genuine smile he had felt in weeks. "If I wanted to give you charity, I would have written a check and never seen you again. I'm here because I've spent my entire career surrounded by people who tell me what I want to hear. You told me the truth when I needed to hear it most. That's not something I can buy." Ella studied his face, searching for any sign of deception. She found none. "I need a week," she said finally, "to think about it. I don't want to make this decision out of desperation. If I take this job, I want it to be because I chose it, not because I had no other options." Fletcher nodded. "Take all the time you need." He reached into his jacket again and pulled out an envelope. "One more thing. The receptionist at the hospital gave this back to me. She said a woman left it at the desk and asked her to make sure I received it." He placed the envelope on the table. "This was the tip money I meant to leave for the staff that night. I was in such a hurry that I forgot to make sure it got distributed properly. It belongs to you. You earned it." Ella opened the envelope. Inside was $1,000 in cash. "This isn't charity," Fletcher said before she could object. "This is payment for services rendered. You worked that night. This is your share. Nothing more, nothing less." She looked at the money for a long time. Then she folded the envelope and put it in her apron pocket. "Thank you." Fletcher stood and extended his hand. Ella shook it. "I'll see you in a week, Miss Thompson." 1 week later, Mia was discharged from the hospital. Her infection had cleared, her fever was gone, and she was strong enough to go home. Ella carried her daughter out of the building in her arms, feeling lighter than she had in months. Her mother was waiting at the apartment with soup on the stove and fresh sheets on Mia's bed. That night, for the first time in longer than Ella could remember, she slept without dreaming of bills and deadlines and impossible choices. The next morning, she put on the nicest clothes she owned, a second-hand blazer and a blouse she had bought at a thrift store 3 years ago. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her collar, trying to see herself as something other than a waitress. Mia watched from the bed, her small face still pale, but her eyes bright with curiosity. "You look pretty, Mommy. Where are you going?" Ella knelt beside her daughter and smoothed the hair back from her forehead. "I'm going to a job interview, baby. A new job. It might not work out, and I might not be good enough, but someone thinks I deserve a chance and I'm going to try." "Who thinks that?" Ella smiled. "A man I met when I did something right, even though it was hard." "Even though nobody was watching?" Mia considered this with the seriousness that only children possess. "Is that why you're nervous? Because you did something right?" "No, sweetheart." Ella kissed her daughter's forehead and stood up. "I'm nervous because this is new, and new things are scary. But I learned something important. Doing the right thing doesn't always mean you get rewarded right away. Sometimes it means you have to wait and trust that the path you're on will lead somewhere good." She walked to the door and looked back at her daughter one last time. The choices we make when no one is watching, those are the choices that tell us who we really are. And those choices, even the small ones, they shape the kind of future we deserve. Mia nodded slowly, as if storing the words away for later. Ella stepped out into the morning light. The envelope with $1,000 tucked safely in her bag, and walked toward a future she had never imagined possible. Not because she had been lucky, not because someone had taken pity on her, but because when the moment came to decide who she really was, she had chosen wisely, and the universe in its own time had noticed. Thank you for staying with Ella's story until the very end. If this touched your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in her shoes? And if you want more stories like this, stories about real people making impossible choices, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. I'll see you in the next one.